This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
This is your home court and home ice have been secured. Leader Fan Radio Network.
Believe.
And KFAN. That's KFAN.com. 2 minutes and 8 seconds past the hour of 3 o'clock Central Daylight Time. We welcome you back to a Wednesday midweek edition of the Bumper to Bumper Afternoon Extravaganza. I am the host of the program. My name's Dan Barreiro. Guardsy produces the show. And we will be with you till the customary 6:30 tonight. My dream of this show ever becoming 3 to 6, I don't think... I'm figuring after this many years, I should give up on it, don't you? I don't think there's any reason to think it's right around the corner.
What's going to happen first? This show goes 3 to 6, or the Timberwolves move to the Eastern Conference of the National Basketball Association?
I think the latter.
Because that might help.
That might.
If we've got a lot of 6 o'clock Wolves games on the East Coast.
That would help.
Maybe we could do it that way.
Well, how often have we been... We're not customarily preempted for a Wolves game, are we? If it's a 6 o'clock start,
we would be. Yes.
Oh, we would
if
be.
If we were having it on the Fan, yeah.
Well, that's the issue, because some games are on the Fan, some games can't be on the Fan because it's Minnesota Wild night.
Exactly.
And in the pecking order, contractually speaking, the Wild take precedent. We still have room for everybody. We love everybody. We have a dedicated Timberwolves channel, highly tooted, highly decorated. And then occasionally, when we can. In fact, it ended up being, I think, a lot more games than anybody anticipated that the Wolves were on FM 100.3 The Fan. And who knows? That could perhaps happen again down the road. Pat Kessler is going to join us in studio tonight at 5:30. 5:30 for Kessie. Bonus Russo Radio back, I'm assuming, from Vegas.
On his way, at least.
And at least on his way at 5:02. And you guessed it, it's Wexler Wednesday, so at 4:02 on Draft Eve, as has become a tradition on this program, it's the return of our official draft
Wexler Week
expert, Marty Wexler III. Back again, Marty Wexler III. Will he be, is he in Green Bay? Do you know?
Yes, that's the interesting thing. He's usually not. I don't think.
I don't think so either.
He could remind us. I don't think he was in Nashville. I don't think he was in Detroit. Maybe he was, and I'm just forgetting about it, but he is in Green Bay. So we will be talking to him, hopefully, from Green Bay in about an hour.
What's the area code here? 320 guy. Your dream doesn't matter. Well, that's sad but true. There's probably some truth to that. Maybe that's the kind of tough love that I need to hear at this point. Very, very true, Davey. Very, very true, Davey. Man, the texts are already coming in on a number of ancillary subjects, including this one from Kevin Fallness. Kevin.
Already?
Fallness. Wild, better than T-Wolves. Of course, he uses that stupid expression. Why? State of hockey. Sorry, Johnny.
Excuse me?
The Johnny in question, I'm assuming, would be Johnny Athletic.
Is there
John
another one?
Krasinski?
Yeah.
Is that correct? Well, the good news is...
Mandela guy had the tweet of the night, by the way, last night. I don't know if you saw it.
I did not.
The Wild game ended at 12:42.
Okay.
And I'm paraphrasing it. The Wild game ended at 12:42, and Mandela guy noted that and said, the power trip will start 30 minutes late today so Kevin Fallness can get his full post-game show.
Well, it's interesting he brings that up, and you bring that up. I assumed that with the late start, that the Wild pregame show last night would be like an hour and 15, because ultimately the 10 o'clock start time became, it may have been all along, 10:15 Central. So I'm going over this with Blakemore yesterday. I'm going, well, I assume extended pregame again at 9, right? He goes, no. Like a 15-minute, maybe a 10-minute pregame show. I go, what?
I love when Brett has to deliver the bad news.
How is that even possible?
That doesn't seem right.
It's not right. It's lazy. On the part of Fallness is what it is. He talks a good game about the state of hockey, including in these texts. You mean to tell me they couldn't have had, okay, if you don't want to start at 9, if an hour and 15 is a little much, how about, I don't know, 9:30? How about even 9:45? How about a 30-minute pregame? It's the playoffs.
Should be pretty easy. And Halvey was in Vegas.
Yeah.
Could have kicked it to Halvey, let him be a part of it.
That's... I guess I've struck a nerve here on the extra half hour. 651 guy writes, retire if the 30 minutes kills you. What are you, 75? Give up, old man.
Tweet that.
A lot of bitterness.
Well, you know what it is? No one's gotten any sleep. Everyone's been up all night.
Cranky?
Everybody's sleep deprived. We're all mad. Obviously, if you're a Wild fan, you're happy. If you're a Wolves fan, you're bitter. But all of us are sleep deprived.
The Wolves.
So we're a little jumpy.
If you take the larger picture, despite the disappointing nature of the setback in Game 2 in Los Angeles, the fact is you come back, at least at this moment, having secured home ice advantage. Home court advantage in this case. Minnesota Wild got exactly that done after losing the opener in, I would argue, kind of familiar fashion.
Minnesota Wild-like fashion.
Very Minnesota Wild-like fashion. I got to give it to Louis. I argued with him yesterday. I said, Louis, we've seen that game a bunch. And he said, I know, but I actually like the way they played the opener. I think they have a very good chance to even the series. And guess what? The Minnesota Wild did exactly that. Was the final score 5-2?
Yes.
5
empty netter for Kirill.
to 2, and it was I think we were up at one point. Weren't we up 4-0?
Mm-hmm.
And then they made a bit of a rush, a bit of a move. Actually, you could argue that, as odd as it sounds, the key component of the victory was how good the goaltender was early. When I was going to say San Jose. I don't know why I'm thinking San Jose. Vegas seemed very much in the mode of, okay, everybody's expecting us to relax after we won the opener. And the assumption is the other team, the team that's lost, is going to play with a little more urgency. We're going to meet them at the pass.
Right.
And they played with more urgency early, but that goes to how a goaltender can negate that. And if he doesn't, who knows if the Wild might have ever caught up offensively and gotten anything done. I think it's fair to say.
Russo tweeted that the Wild played the first 5 minutes like they were at the pool all day in Vegas.
Okay, well, that's a good way to put it.
It is a good way to put it. And then they flipped the switch.
So Kaprizov and Boldy, huge, especially Kaprizov. We're reminded again that Kaprizov, I think, at his best, represents the best kind of scorer. And that is a guy who can put the puck in the net, but also a guy who can play make for teammates. To me, that's the gold standard. I mean, look, you'll take a big-time scorer, but if the big-time scorer can also set other people up, then it's all the better. It's sort of like having a scoring point guard in the National Basketball Association. And by the way, don't text me because you're bitter that the analogy I went with in a hockey game or describing a hockey player is a basketball analogy. Just don't be so insecure about it. It's okay.
It's a nice way to relate to people that might not follow the sweet game of hockey.
It should. And in addition, Russo, for one, very much endorses what he believes was the really only significant lineup tweak we made, right? Ryan Hartman goes to third-line center. Your guy, Rossi, struggling badly, goes to fourth-line center. And ultimately, the Foligno, Hartman, Nyquist line, very successful and very effective as well. And, I mentioned home ice, which technically you now have. This strikes me as a series in which it may be hard to keep that it's likely to go back and forth. But at the very least, that's what you come back home with. 1-1 with a chance maybe to take full advantage of the position, technically speaking, you now have. Now, the irony, of course, is we've been a much better road team this year than we've been a home team. So maybe it's rendered less important this time around, but I think you'll still take it. You'll still take the opportunity. First of all, you have to win a game. You don't want to get down 2-0. That's the key. The Lakers clearly did not want to get down 2-0. They definitely played with more urgency and fire early, although they really did that in game one, in the opener, in the first quarter as well. And the saving grace, I guess, for the Wolves is they are coming home with home ice, home court. They got the game that you absolutely had to have. they were more dominant start to finish. Well, really not start to finish, second quarter to finish in their victory than the Lakers were, because it did look in the fourth quarter like, man, you hit about, I don't know, 1.5 more shots.
That's it.
Lakers were, they looked spent. They looked a little bit concerned. They looked a little bit tuckered, but we couldn't hit a shot, or we couldn't hit enough shots consistently to do it. But I don't think anybody came out of that going, well, the Lakers have completely solved the Wolves. They've completely turned this thing around, and now the Wolves will be lucky to win another game. I think the moral is likely that this is going to be what I believe most smart people felt at the beginning, before the series took place, a long series. This is likely to be a long series. I've got more to get to with you there, including, to me, the key statistical nuggets from game number 2. I trust people used whatever. We spent a lot of time on yesterday's show talking about various methods, that hacks that people had to keep themselves awake. Not all of them were necessarily appreciated, because one of them was cocaine. And I'm thinking, well, that's not something we want to recommend here on this show.
No, we don't endorse it.
We don't endorse it.
Kessler might.
But
we will not.
Kessler's more of a ganja guy, I think.
That's true.
And the ganja people told me, well, if you go with heavy ganja, you're going to fall asleep.
You're not even going to make inside the NBA pregame.
Exactly right. So everybody had, I think, their shortcuts, their ideas of how to stay awake, and I trust many of you did. Although maybe you were so discouraged by the Wolves loss that you said, screw it, I'm not even going to mess with it. By the time that game's over and you switch over, you might have been emboldened and inspired to stay awake, because I think the Wild at that point were up 4-0.
Yeah, by the time it was over, I think it was 4-1 about to start the third.
Maybe, yeah.
And then Vegas scored right away.
Correct.
And then it's a ball game. Then you got to stay with it, because you go, let's see how this thing finishes.
See if the Wild can blow a lead in Timberwolves-like fashion. Another basketball analogy to explain a hockey situation. First,
we're going to give away bonus bucks in a minute, but I want to remind people, today's Wednesday, right? I stayed up so late last night, I don't even know what day it is. It's Wednesday. We are running back the Wolves back talkbacks on this Wednesday. Nice. Talkbacks all day today, 30 seconds like we did earlier in the week. I know you did this yesterday as well with the TI giveaway, but we're giving away another pair of tickets to Wolves-Lakers Game 3 on Friday. So hit the talkback. You should know what to do by now. 30 seconds on why you think the Wolves are going to win the series. In terms of bonus bucks, BigDeck.com wants to help you with that. First keyword of the afternoon is check. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword check.
Got an interesting text during the break from the 214 area code. An individual who shall remain nameless, at least for now. He writes, Chowder. Don't forget Buxton's catch last night against your White Sox. It was Randy Moss-like. I'm not sure this individual has been back long enough to understand that, as nice a catch as it was, there's nothing the Minnesota Twins can do or are doing right now that are worthy of first or even second segment discussion. Sorry. It's just the way it is, especially against the White Sox. The gift that keeps on giving. White Sox gave away runs early a couple of times. They committed some of the defensive atrocities that we've been committing. That opened the door. Yeah, it was a marvelous catch. Probably saved the game.
Necessary, yeah.
But it's just, I'm sorry. It's the White Sox. They're still well under 500, and we'll get maybe in the top 5. It will be worthwhile. Willow, Mark Rosen's cat guy, State Fair T-shirt idea. I survived the 10:15 p.m. Wild game. Was it really that hard to do? In all seriousness, didn't we turn that whole story into too much of a Wagnerian opera? We all got through it one way or another.
I don't know. I think we're all a little frayed today. Yeah. I know I am.
It should be less frayed because we got the victory.
Yeah.
Right?
A little bit.
Victory you had to have.
You did. I am glad that both teams are into the series. My paranoia in these first-round series, any series, is that you just never get into them.
No.
That you maybe give away a game that you should have won, or you get swept on somebody's home court the first two, then the pressure's on you to win game 3. They come in and steal it. That's how low my standards are after 20-plus years of both of these teams sporadically in the playoffs and never making runs. I just want to get in and let's make things interesting.
Yeah.
Because when we get into series,
more than one series.
Yeah, when we get into series, we typically do okay.
Well, again, what's hard to know what to celebrate in the case of the Wild is they've been in several competitive first-round series, but ultimately have found a way to lose it. So we'll see where this thing goes from here. We went overboard to celebrate the ant colony several times in recent weeks, but especially in the wake of Game 1 of the first-round series against the Lakers. Well, the ant colony, if you want to really reduce the game 2 to a single topic, it's the ant colony again. Game 1, McDaniels, Reed, Dante, Nikhil. 25 for 43 from the floor. That's 58.1%. 11 made threes, 64 points, 1 turnover.
That's pretty good.
Game 2 last night, McDaniels, Reed, Dante, Nikhil. The ant colony. 8 for 29, 21.6% from the floor. 1 made three, 25 points, 7 turnovers. Now here's the math. That's 39 fewer points, 37 fewer percentage points on shooting percentage, 10 fewer made threes, 6 more turnovers. What else? In all honesty, I mean, we can talk about other permutations of it. We can
throw in fouls and foul trouble and
all of that kind of stuff.
All that issues. Yes, that's your ball game.
But that's your ball game. It's as simple as that. And in all honesty, I think most people would say for consistency, the Lakers' third wheel over the course of the last quarter of the season certainly has been better than what might be classified as our top 3. I don't know who you want to put as our third. Is it Naz Reid? Probably most likely to get close to that. But what the Wolves are supposed to be able to answer with is our third guy might not be as good as your third guy on average, but we got like 3 other guys to go along with our third guy. We actually have 4 guys in the minimum in the colony who, collectively can do much more than what the Lakers can do once they get past their top 3. So I'm not expecting, I don't know if it's realistic to expect they shoot as well as the colony did in Game 1. But you've got to be much better in several ways. Scoring, activity, discipline in terms of the fouls.
That's it.
Dante was rendered meaningless. He was meaningless in this game. I mean, he might as well not have even, in all seriousness, he might as well not have even played because he was in foul trouble when he was in. I didn't think he was particularly very stylish or effective either. So, we can certainly talk about Anthony Edwards and the way they did, I think, a better job of trying to clog the lanes for him. He talked about not even knowing what he was looking at in the first quarter. They definitely had a greater heaviness to their defensive approach. There's no question about that. That was predictable. You knew that was going to happen. Can they carry that out for, 3 more victories? I don't know that they can, but you knew that they were going to do that. I thought LeBron played with a lot more force, quite frankly, than he did in Game 1 of the series. And, we talked a lot about the fact that in Game 1, Luka was ineffective as a distributor. Well, similarly, he was more effective as a distributor in Game 2. Meanwhile, Anthony Edwards, who was a great distributor in Game 1, I don't think Anthony Edwards had a single assist.
He didn't, and that's the first time in like 3 years.
Is that right?
That's happened.
Yeah.
And some of that was him, but a lot of it was the colony. And the ball was way too sticky in the first quarter.
Yes.
It was just one pass, ISO, and obviously you knew LA was going to come out with fury and fire.
Yeah.
But I honestly left that game last night, Dan, with Carl Gerbschmidt-like defiance that the Wolves should win this series.
Well, they should.
I mean, they should have won the game last night. Literally, I can't say should have.
No.
But had they just shown any type of consistency for like 6 straight minutes,
right.
You mentioned how weathered they looked. I'm pretty sure JJ was calling timeouts just to give his guys rest.
No question. And
what happens right after a timeout? LeBron gives you like 60 seconds. I wish we could bet it live on DraftKings. LeBron's point total in the next 90 seconds after a timeout. Because he comes out, he's been resting for 3 minutes. He's good. That's when he had the steal on Ant that pretty much sold.
That's all they needed.
Sold the game. But I left last night thinking, I don't think the Lakers can do this another three times.
I think it's unlikely, unless there's a complete implosion by the Colony.
Yes, like or if Luka goes nuts and they've got nothing for him, he's obviously a huge X factor. But the Colony, we said it before the series, the Colony is going to tell the story. And I think they're going to settle somewhere in the middle of games 1 and game 2. Yeah. Don't you think?
Well, they better, or else you are.
Both of them are crazy aberrations.
A difficulty. Yeah, it was the contrast was quite dramatic. And we'll get into Rudy later because there's a lot of it's another litmus test Rudy game that a lot of folks are debating. And Julius Randle, for me, reverted in that he had the ball too much. But I will say in his defense, part of it might have been he noticed that, the Colony's not doing anything. So no one else seems inclined to get anything done offensively. So I almost don't have a choice but to do a little bit more than he did. That's why I'd give him, a little bit of grace on reverting at times to that place where you go, oh man, no, this was the problem before you got injured. We don't need to go back to that. But nobody else seemed inclined to get involved in anything. And physically, I think you could say he's the one guy who said, okay, bring it on. Physically, that did not necessarily seem to bother him. The Luka, even by Luka standards, the Luka ongoing conversation with the refs, honestly, it's unprecedented in the history. I think in the history of I don't even think Draymond touches him because it may not be obscene. Maybe that's his saving grace.
Yeah,
but it literally never.
It's ridiculous.
It literally never stops.
It's ridiculous.
The entire game. All right, so. Well, we're actually we have no 3:30 guest, right?
That's right.
Our first guest will be Marty Wexler III at 4:02. If, by the way, you have draft related questions, get them into the Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line now at 646-86. But let's stay on schedule in the meantime. Also, Russo Radio files a live report on Game 2 of the Wild Series at 5:02. Kessler in studio at 5.
KFAN and Custom One Exteriors want to give you a chance to catch the St. Paul Saints in action. Check out our contest page. See how you could win a 4-pack of tickets to the Saints game against the Scranton Rail Riders. That's on June 7th. KFAN.com, keyword contests.
Russo is going to join at the top of the 5 o'clock hour, 5:02. He will give us his review on the Wild's big victory last night in Vegas to even the series at a game apiece. We're on an every other day schedule for the Wild, right? Wild in Vegas. So Game 3 will be tomorrow night.
Yeah.
At the X, right here on the Fan. And it's an 8 p.m. start our time?
It is 8 p.m.
I'm assuming pregame show will start at 7:55.
I think we'll just take it right at the top.
Probably true. Maybe they want us to go long for that. I have absolutely no idea.
You know what's going to precede it for the first hour and change is Vikings draft.
Oh, that's right. It's draft Thursday.
We're going to do the Vikings draft party.
Yeah.
And that'll go right into Wild coverage.
Do you buy the notion that as much as, football fans thrive around the draft, that it's harder to get too enthused when you're picking as low as the Vikings are picking?
Totally.
Yeah. I just,
at least for me it is.
Definitely for me as well. And that doesn't, again, mean you can't get a good player, because that's what good teams do, is even when they're drafting that low, somebody slips or they see something that other people don't, and you take full advantage of it. But I do think, and look, if you're a fan, you'd rather be drafting low, right? I mean, if you're drafting high a lot, then that pretty much tells you that your regular seasons aren't going very well and don't mean very much. So it's a function of it, but I do think it takes away a little of the intrigue and excitement. And to a certain extent, because the team has been as active in free agency as it has the past 2 years, but especially this year, I think that's another reason that the draft itself, even though it has great currency and it matters and it's important to draft properly, wisely, and develop players because they're cheaper, that I don't think people are have the same bated breath as we approach draft Thursday as might be the case in some other cities as well. Yesterday, we got into the subject with Seifert of the possibility of Cousins ending up here, which we've touched on before. Cousins surprised everybody in Atlanta by showing up for their non-required workout. What that means. Does that mean he's perfectly willing to be a backup there?
He's a good soldier.
Does it mean he wants to make people understand that he still wants to play in the league? And would he consider waiving that no-trade clause to end up back here? The wrinkle that fascinated me, speaking of the draft, is the possibility, because the assumption was, well, if you're going to go get Cousins as your backup, you don't want any of the financial burden, right? That is associated with that contract. But to the contrary, it may well be that the Vikings would be one of those teams that would be willing to take on a bit more of the financial burden if in return Atlanta gives them some draft choices. Now, realistically, that's not going to help us in this draft unless a deal would be announced soon, but it might. You can never have too many draft choices, right?
No.
And we haven't had very many. This year we're going into the draft with 4. So we'll see on that part of it where that goes. Cousins, at the end of the year, looked pretty inept to me. And I wondered, that's when this chatter started again. Well, how healthy is he? Can he move at all? I don't know what the answer to that is. But as a backup option, if you can either get him at a good price or you can, we're willing this year to pay a little bit more if we can get some currency, some draft currency. There are worse ideas than that, are there not? As long as because I think we'll all agree that the chances are pretty good that as a backup, Cousins is going to be less dangerous and less corrosive than Aaron Rodgers might be.
I don't know. Aaron seems pretty
loosey-goosey,
humbled in his last Pat McAfee appearance.
Yeah.
Maybe I read that wrong. I don't know. Yes, of course. He'd be much more low maintenance.
A couple people are asking, so draft coverage after the Wild start tomorrow, is it then, does the draft coverage, I think, stays on the Fan, does it not?
No.
Oh, I was wrong. Okay, it is what you said?
So we start at 6, I think, tomorrow with the draft.
Okay.
If not, it's 7. 7 to 8.
Right.
And then at 8 o'clock, we switch here on the Fan of the Wild pregame show. Puck drop's going to be about 8:20.
All right, so the draft then goes to the Plus?
The draft goes to Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130,
All right.
as well as the iHeartRadio app.
Okay.
And as we've mentioned, I know a couple of times this week, really going into last week, there's never been a better time, if you have not yet taken advantage of the iHeartRadio app preset function, to go ahead and do that.
This would be the time.
Last night was a great option to do it if you wanted to flip back and forth between Alan Horton and Joe and Tom and Kevin Fallness.
Yes.
Obviously, Thursday is going to be a big night for that as well. So hit all the presets of your iHeartRadio app. The draft coverage will shift after the first hour to Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130 and 103.5 FM.
Game 3, Wolves-Lakers, is Friday night.
Yes.
And that's an 8 o'clock start as well, if I'm not mistaken. And then the Sunday game, is that a matinee game?
That is a 2:30, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a 2:30 start as well. Interestingly, the national reaction, I think, if I can encapsulate it and summarize it, is this is still the Wolves series to lose. That's what I'm hearing, which is interesting because before the thing started, it was Lakers in 5.
Right.
So it has shifted dramatically to a place that even after the Lakers won a game that they were actually, leading literally start to finish, is more, well, yeah. In fact, I think it was Kenny Smith said, I really thought game 2, the Lakers didn't play that much better than game 1, but the Wolves played a lot worse. Now, I'm willing to give the Lakers a little bit more credit for that than the Jet is, because I think they came out far more purposeful, and I think they were more forceful defensively. Whether that, again, can carry over on the road, that's a fair question, because it doesn't always. But it's changed to where now, well, no, it's still, and I think in part it was because even though the Lakers maintained the lead, it felt shaky. It felt like, again, if Naz Reid hits 3 straight threes,
right,
you might be able to actually steal the ball game. The crowd seemed very nervous. The head coach for the Lakers seemed nervous. And several of the Lakers, including Luka and LeBron, looked gassed. Like, oh, my God, we're still out here trying to carry this thing across the finish line. And their guys, they may not be playing very well, and they certainly aren't shooting very well, but they don't look tired. They don't look like they don't have any energy left. The Wolves have been, like a lot of teams, sometimes the energy spurt is directly related to getting on an 8-point run where you hit 4 straight shots. And we never did that. We hit a couple in a row, but we never had, even though we had several chances to cut the lead to a place where you think the Lakers might actually get scared, the Wolves could never bring it down to quite to the number that maybe then the Lakers really do start, to use Luka's term from Game 1, let go of the proverbial rope, as we say.
They had it to 9. Ant had an open 3 on the left wing.
Yeah, that's right. That was the big one.
If that goes in, it's 6. And I don't know what happens after that.
Yeah, we don't know, but it felt like it could be one then it could just get flipped.
Yeah, with everything that even to have it at 15 at halftime, I thought was a miracle.
Yes.
And that's where I tweeted out, because everybody was giving up in the first quarter, obviously, right? Because there's a lot that has to go your way when you give up a quarter like you did. But I was just watching it, and they didn't seem to have the same zip in the second quarter.
Correct.
And Minnesota wasn't playing that well, but you look up and go, 15 points. Like you said, that's one run.
Yeah.
That gets you in it. And even the timeout, the infamous timeout where JJ, they're about to inbound it, and he just loses his mind. I think he knows. I think he knows that this is going to be a lot harder than maybe the public thought. That they are going to have to push the button for longer than than he thinks they can. With what did Luka play last night? 40-some minutes. LeBron played 40-some minutes. I think Rui played like 39. Yeah. They only played 7 or 8 guys, and 4 of them played 37, 8, 9 plus minutes. I don't think they want to do that very often, but they needed to. And I think he knows, and even in postgame last night, he wasn't his usual JJ self, because I think he kind of knows they probably dodged a bullet after the good start that the Wolves couldn't do anything at the rim.
Yes. And
they couldn't make any shots that they made in Game 1.
Yeah. Well, the question, some people have wondered, Conley had a miserable Game 2. So what's the head coach going to do? Is he going to stick with the same lineup, which I think he's probably likely to do? Or is this a situation where you do have to consider maybe making a change there by putting DiVincenzo in the starting lineup? Although he was terrible, he also was in foul trouble.
He was in right away though last night, right? Like 4 minutes in.
That's true. Well, the room, the word is, this is the new NBA cliche. The Lakers were hunting.
Yeah.
I remember last year we're hunting for Rudy.
Yep.
In fact, it's an interesting conversation in of itself, because I don't know when Barkley said this, if he said it before the game or he said it even after the Lakers' victory. And I tend to agree with him whenever he said it. I think teams that get too hung up on the hunting for kind of lose the overall. They get too worried about winning that war or that battle, I would say, and not enough about winning the war. If you're taking away from what you want to do in terms of your offensive flow to, hey, we found the guy we want to hunt, everybody else stop what they're doing and let that guy hunt him, I'm not sure that's helpful to a team. Even somebody who can do it as good as Luka. And I heard Antonio Daniels today, and I don't even know if he's a big Rudy supporter or not. The analytics for Rudy yesterday, defensively, were actually good.
Yes.
I didn't like him at all offensively.
He was a mess.
It was one of those games where you go, get it. Don't send the ball to him unless it's a dunk. That's the only time you get it to him. Because he was not
his little layup off the steal, which was unbelievable.
Yeah, that was. But how often are you going to?
Never.
We may never see that again.
We probably won't.
Any more than we'll ever see. Didn't he hit a 3-pointer last year in the playoffs?
He hit like that turnaround shot against the Nuggets.
Turnaround, yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, that was from like 16 feet.
But, Antonio made the point that for people who continue to get aroused by, look what Luka, they get him in isolation. And in this case, actually, that isolation didn't lead to that many. I think, again, the analytics say Luka was 1 for 4.
Yes.
Against Rudy.
LeBron was 2 for 4.
LeBron was, which is okay. But we're back to this stupidity about getting hung up over, well, this guy's supposed to be the defensive player of the year. And I'm thinking, again, do we have to go through this nonsense once more? That who's considered the greatest defensive player of all time? Bill Russell. Does anyone in their right mind think that Bill Russell isolated out high against a wing player of Luka's ability would look any more inept than Rudy can? Antonio's point was, here's the dirty little secret. Everybody looks inept most of the time against Luka Doncic, isolated, out high, or on the wing. That's the bottom line. And so to make any sort of, because he's the defensive player of the year, how can he be the defensive player of the year and give those things up? Because he is not hired to win that often in those isolations. He's just not. That's not, and no big man, even some of the greatest defensive big men, including Bill Russell in history, are wired or made to exert them, influence the game defensively in that sense. That's just not how it's going to work. And so if you want to play the game of isolating oh man, broke his ankles again. Did you see him like wince a little bit? You can get excited about that, but if you're not interested or willing to look at the 4 plays that surrounded it defensively that weren't that sexy, but were every bit as important in changing the other team's possession, then you're not serious about this. You've just decided it's your lot in life to take everything out on Rudy and mock him and ridicule him and isolate him. And God bless you if you want to do it, but it really doesn't have anything to do with the basketball.
And we've spent so much time on that particular point over the last few years that, and I think you and I have both come to the same place, that I'm not going to waste any more time worrying about the idiots.
Correct.
Because he was cooking Jaden last night just as much as he was cooking Rudy. Luka cooks everybody. And by the way, when you score 94 points, fewer than 100 points in an NBA game, back-to-back games.
2 straight games, yeah.
Nobody's getting cooked.
No.
The kitchen's closed. No one's getting cooked.
Yeah.
Now, he had a couple of great highlights. Obviously, the Larry Bird fake pass where he went into the jumper was unbelievable. But the other thing, and Charles did mention that post-game, that it's obvious. He fights around the screens, wants to get Rudy. Then you hear crypto. You hear everybody going, here it comes again. Everybody got their phone?
Yeah.
Get your phone out. We got to send this to Barstool or Draymond. Well, here's the other problem with that is, first of all, Luka wasn't as successful last night. And I think when you dribble around for 17 seconds, and Rudy does make him work through a couple of different moves. That's why some of them are so insane, because he does have a counter to the counter to the counter, and he does have to go deep in his bag. Luka was tired as hell at the end of the game.
There's no question about it.
And that, you look at the fourth quarter shots, he's short, LeBron's short. So I don't love just definitely giving the ISOs up and having Rudy just take it like they're doing.
No, you don't. You try to fend it off, but
because it hurts his rebounding too.
Yes.
He only had 6 rebounds last night, and somebody, because everybody does this now on our side, puts out all the Rudy ISOs from the whole series so you can watch, as opposed to just the one that goes viral. And a lot of times he's not there to get the rebound, and they do get offensive rebounds out of it, which I do think hurt.
How do we get to a place, though? Because the anticipation in the crowd when we say, here we go, like you say, let's get our cameras ready, let's get the popcorn going. If you're in a summer league exhibition, I guess I get that.
Right. I know. It's ridiculous.
You're trying to even the series. I don't know how you get, I guess I do know how you get to that place, because of all those viral videos you talk about. We're so consumed with and obsessed with, and I guess almost distracted by those viral moments that we give more attention to and assign more importance to those plays than the plays that give you the best chance over the period of the game to win the game. And even with the Lakers, who have 2 players who can go into isolation, I'm guessing that in their perfect world, they'll accept a certain amount of isolation with Luka, because that's sort of the way he plays. You have to accept that when you trade for him. But that they want a little bit more flow in that regard. They want to get other people involved to a certain degree. But the idea that that's the only thing that matters, it could be it's the only thing that matters to you. But that doesn't necessarily mean it reflects what gives you the best chance to win, and what ended up being the difference in that ball game. And the difference in that ball game had very little to do with what was going on the Lakers' offensive end, which overall, as you say, wasn't that effective. It had to do with what we talked about, what the ant colony didn't do in Game 2 after they did it at a level that's probably unrealistic to feel like it was going to be sustained. But they went from literally one extreme to the other, from a shooting standpoint, from a ball security standpoint, from a foul discipline standpoint, and pretty much, and a scoring standpoint. It was, we said, the difference was 39 points. McDaniels, Reed, Dante, Nikhil scored 64 in Game 1 collectively, and they scored, but among the four of them, 25 points, turned the ball over 6 more times as well. Real quick, between 6 and 6:30, we got into the only 8-section stuff we got into, and we may get back into this today with Kessler if there's any meat left on the bone. The story breaking that the idiot responsible for all the Tesla damage, who he pretty much admitted to doing it, and ultimately the decision was made by Moriarty's office we're going to do a deferral program. Basically, there's not going to be any criminal prosecution. Well, I went off on that yesterday because I think it's a bad decision, but not a surprising decision on the basis of what we know from that administration and out of that office. And I also quickly added that we're all well aware that these are property crimes. There's a difference between property crimes and, quite frankly, other cases that I think Moriarty has failed miserably on, having to do with plea bargains, those sorts of deals. Because in those cases, there was bodily harm involved on those occasions. In fact, I'm thinking one of them even a shooting death. But immediately, what tends to happen is we revert to, are you really going to spend that much time on this? And by the way, we spent 11 minutes on it.
I was going to say, it sounds like about 9-10 minutes.
That's exactly it, because from between 6 and 6:30, it's pretty tight. When Rome is burning, and all I can tell those individuals, and I wanted to emphasize this point today, is we can do several things at the same time. And if you live in that world where at any given moment you have no ability to evaluate a story on the basis of that story itself, because you're pointing at, well, look what Trump world's doing. How can you not go off on that? When, in fact, we have gone off on endless and myriad issues since Trump returned to office. You're part of the problem. You're absolutely part of the problem because you can't see the forest for the trees. You live in the Sharks Jets world, and I can say, well, in the grand scheme of things, is that story as big as a couple of others that are going on in Washington? No. But that doesn't mean we have to ignore those stories, especially in the case of this Hennepin County attorney and her office, as part of a larger pattern that we've talked about again and again and again. That matters on the local level to a large degree. So look in the mirror a little bit if you're one of those people who, I don't want to hear anything of it. See what's going on with Pete Hegseth? Like, we can't talk about more than one thing at once. And we're immediately somehow making them seem equally important because in one segment at the end of a 3.5-hour show
that happened yesterday,
we reacted to the news in 12 minutes. I shake my head, and my only hope again is that the vast majority of people are more reasonable on stuff like that, but they're not as likely to text, they're not as likely to tweet, they're not as likely to call in, and that's part of what we have to remember, because it's absolutely a story worth discussing. And as I said, I think the decision was not surprising to me. I'm not at all surprised. But that doesn't mean I endorse it, because I think it's a bad call that, quite frankly, given the political ramifications, I don't care how bad and remorseful this individual allegedly feels now. What the hell's he going to say? I mean, the attorney's doing his job. That's what the attorneys say. Hey, look, he feels real bad about it. We're happy for you. You specifically concentrated your activity on a product that's associated with a guy you can't stand, not knowing whether any of the individuals who are driving those cars, they may feel the same way about Elon Musk. But they
got it a few years ago.
They might have gotten it. And regardless, it shouldn't matter, but it was so important for him to do what he did. There are, in this case, the political ramifications should have something to do with the approach that you take in that case. That doesn't mean we're incapable of discussing Rome burning. It means we can't continuously be speaking about the same subject for 3.5 hours, which means over the course of a show, we're allowed to go into different subjects. And if you lose your mind and say, I didn't hear him talking about Trump today, that means what it tells me is you're not willing to be honest about the realities that story reflects, the specifics of that particular case. Draft day is tomorrow.
Wexler week.
That means it's Wexler week. That means today is Wexler day. He is going to join us next with the very latest on what he thinks might happen in the draft. It's always controversial, sometimes a bit tense, but we always appreciate our guy Marty Wexler III. He is coming up next.